Hello and welcome to Classic Book Reviews with David. Today I'm going to be reviewing Casting the Runes by M.R. James. It's one of his most famous short stories. It's a horror story and a very good one at that, I must say. One of his best. It's been adapted into a film called Night of the Demon, or sometimes known as Curse of the Demon. And it was published, I think it was first published in 1911. As part of a ghost story collection of M.R. James's works. But it was probably written quite a few years before that, prior to the collection being made. M.R. James often used to read his stories at Eton and at Cambridge, where he worked and also had studied as well previously. So, Casting the Runes is a story about a man called Edward Dunning, who works for the British Library, and he reviews a paper called The Truth of Alchemy by someone called Mr. Carswell. And he doesn't think much of this, The Truth of Alchemy by Mr. Carswell, and decides that this paper should not be published or reviewed or anything like that. And Mr. Carswell is not a happy bunny, let's say. He's not very happy that his paper has been rejected by this eminent authority. Now, Mr. Dunning, as he's sometimes called Edward Dunning, he starts to feel a little bit strange, a little bit creeped out, and he becomes a bit reclusive and everything seems a bit spooky and scary, and he doesn't know what's going on. And one day when he's on the bus, he sees a poster referring to a man called John Harrington, who also had given a poor review of a work of Mr. Carswell. Now, this John Harrington died under mysterious circumstances, and Mr. Dunning gets in touch with John Harrington's brother, who says that John Harrington became more and more reclusive, fearful, and in the end died under strange circumstances. And this seems to be the route that Mr. Dunning is taking. You know, he's becoming fearful of things. Something seems to be pursuing him, something malevolent, but he can't figure out what it is. It transpires that both Mr. Dunning and Mr. Harrington had been given slips of paper with what looked like runes on. Now, Mr. Harrington's paper was destroyed, and he was pursued by this malevolent force, and ultimately it killed him. Now, Dunning finds this slip of paper, and they work out, that is, Mr. Harrington's brother and Dunning work out that Mr. Carswell must have slipped him this bit of paper, this cursed bit of paper. And they wonder what to do. They can't destroy it. If they destroy it, the creature will continue to follow them. So what they decide to do is they decide to try and slip the paper back to Mr. Carswell in the hope that this creature, or whatever it is, will go off and pursue Mr. Carswell instead. I won't give away the ending of the story, but it is a very good story. It's just wonderfully written. I used to think that the language that M.R. James used was rather dry and a bit dull. And to begin with, I thought his stories were a bit boring, to be honest. But I kept having to go back and read more and more of them. And when I'd read all of them, I still thought they were a bit dull. And yet I had to read them over again. And probably after the third or fourth reading, I realised that actually I really liked his stories. Something about them. I don't know if it's the atmosphere or the characters or the malevolent spirits that come along, and the way these things seem to pursue people, which is a common theme through M.R. James' stories. I don't know if that's what makes the stories so good. But Casting the Runes is one of the best, and it's certainly one of my favourites, and I read it a few days ago, and that's why I'm reviewing it now. It is a great tale. It may be that these days you have to sort of get into the habit. you sort of need to get into the sort of swing of reading M.R. James's stories, because they're not like modern stories in the way they're written, because they are old. They were written in late Victorian, early Edwardian times or thereabouts. So the writing style is a bit slower, perhaps a bit drier than you might expect. But they are really well worth a read, and I think Casting the Runes is absolutely one of his best. And for that reason, here's Blackie the Blackboard. Casting the Runes. Oh, you've done it again, Blackie. 5 stars. Honestly, 5 stars. This star keeps dropping off. There. 5 stars. Well deserved. Right, 5 stars. Blackie disagrees. He says 4 stars, but I say 5. And that's all there is to say about it, really. I've put some links below where you can find this book, well, this story as part of an anthology, well, a collection of M.R. James's stories, I should say. And if you want to, you can always follow, subscribe, and all I can say now is thanks for watching.